Hello, this is Dr. Gardner. I'd like to welcome you to CHEM 101. I just want to introduce you to some of the rules in the course and what you will need to do in order to complete all of your assignments today. First of all, if you are on campus, realize you could visit to talk to me during my office hours in the Evergreen building. My office number is A17. And if you email me, make sure you use my complete name, all in lowercase letters here. Joseph Gardner at CSI.edu. Make sure you use my complete name. If you decided to type in J Gardner at CSI.edu, you'd actually be emailing Jerry Gardner, our security guard on campus. So make sure you use my complete name there. It's also listed in the syllabus, so you have reference to this to make sure you send your emails to the right location. A great time to send your emails to me would be during my office hours on campus. I can usually get back to you very quickly. If you email me at other times, there may be a slightly longer delay, but I will email you back as soon as I can. My office hours currently on Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays are from 9 to 10 a.m. and on Mondays and Fridays 2 to 3 p.m. And every day of the week here on campus, if you happen to be on campus, we have a chem help session at noon. So that won't fit some of your schedules, but just realize there is a chemist always available in Evergreen room A15, which is right across from my office, that can give you a hand. And I'm specifically there on Mondays from noon to 12:50 to give help in room A15, the physics room across from my office. Now, if these times don't fit your schedules well, just realize you can email me or call me. An email is a great way to send information. You can always attach a screen capture if you're having problems with an assignment, so I can see exactly what you're doing, what you're entering. That's a good way to communicate with me rapidly. Or you can type in what's going on, but give me lots of details. Make sure I know what section of the course you're in so that I can get back to you as soon as possible with details relevant to your course, because I am teaching quite a few different sections this semester. If you would like to come and see me at other times, you can set up an appointment and I can meet you on Tuesdays and Thursdays. The best time to catch me would be right after 5 p.m. I usually come back after a full day in courses and labs, and I'll check my email then and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Usually I will email back before 6 p.m. on Tuesdays and Thursdays, so those are times you can get a hold of me as well. If there's a group of you of at least 3 or more students who would like to meet here on campus on Saturdays, I will often be glad to do a review session for my dual credit students. If you plan a couple weeks in advance that there's a fairly large group of you who would like to meet on a Saturday with a location, I might be willing to drive out to your school and meet with you on a Saturday to help review topics if you're having trouble. Just plan that in advance and let me know so I can put that in my schedule. Thank you very much. Let's look at some of the prerequisites for the course. You should have the equivalent of Math 108 or placement test scores on the Compass or SAT into Math 143, which is college algebra or higher. So if you do not have that background where you're really comfortable solving for algebraic variables, you might find some parts of this course quite challenging, because we will use different letters for variables in a chemistry class, and so if you're not always seeing X, Y, and Z, you should still feel really comfortable solving for those variables. For example, in our gas laws chapter, you're going to have to solve for pressures and volumes and temperatures and numbers of moles of gas by solving algebraic equations. So you need to be really comfortable with that. You should be comfortable with working with logarithms, base 10 logarithms. You should also be comfortable with using exponents in your mathematical background in order to be prepared for this class. What you might want to do as well with your calculators is look up how to enter scientific notation. We will start entering scientific notation fairly quickly in the course in the first few chapters, so that's something you need to be really comfortable with the calculator that you're using. I'll give some recommendations here in a minute for types of calculators that would work well in the course if you don't already have one that you like. The co-requisites for the course is that you must also be taking the Chem 101 laboratory. And at the high schools, you should be working in the laboratories on Tuesdays and Thursdays and be covering the lecture materials on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. So be aware of that. Now, it's quite important that you pay attention in lab and work hard on your lab reports. You must have a passing grade in lab in order to pass the course. I'll mention that again, but just realize that. I do expect that you work quite hard in the course. I'm predicting that roughly 6 to 10 hours a week, you'll be working on homework and reading, quizzes for the course. So just be aware you're going to be putting in quite a few hours each week. We are treating this at a college level course. The difficulty level is very similar to what you would expect on campus if you're in one of our dual credit locations. So laboratory attendance is required. You must pass the laboratory in order to pass the course. So make sure you're present. With respect to the textbook you should be using Introduction to Chemistry, the 3rd edition. The authors are Bauer, Burke, and Marks. Okay, McGraw-Hill Connect bundles this with Connect Plus. If you get the hard copy book, it's something we sell on campus in the bookstore. Some of you might feel quite comfortable using just the Connect Plus, which is only the ebook version of the book and the online homework, but you must definitely have access to McGraw-Hill Connect, the online homework, and you should go ahead and set up your account on McGraw-Hill Connect before the first week of class so you can start working on assignments immediately, right at the beginning of the course. If you do not have that set up, you could potentially miss an assignment and receive a 0 grade, so be prepared for that. If you do not yet have a purchased copy of the ebook and the online homework, just realize that you can sign up for the online homework for a 2-week free trial until you can get your purchased copy. So none of you should have an excuse for not having access, since you can have that free trial to get you started. When you set up the free trial, it will ask for you to enter your email address. Make sure that's the same email address that you're going to be using for the course, and that when you register your paid copy with that for the online homework, that you use the same email address, or you may have some scores on assignments that you will zero out if you do not use the same email address. So do not use multiple trials or multiple accounts, only one account per person. Okay. I have a little introduction to using McGraw-Hill Connect and Blackboard where you can find your assignments. If you watch that video, which should be linked on your announcement page for the course, as well as in an email that I've sent out, make sure you watch the introduction and you'll see locations of all the assignments and a basic introduction there to how to access assignments on Connect and Blackboard. Okay. So as I said, you must have the class online homework access, and that will give you access to my reading assignments. Now the reading assignments or reading quizzes or tests, however that's referred to when I'm discussing it, realize they're Learn Smart assignments. They're little quizzes that test how well you've read the chapters, and I assign these Learn Smart assignments before you will usually cover some of the material in the lecture, because I want to see how well you're understanding it from your reading, and that also gives you the tools to know what you need to ask questions about when you email me or ask your instructors. Okay, so you must have access to that. The other assignments on Connect will be homework assignments or extra practice problems, but those are very important. Part of your grade comes from the Reading Learn Smart assignments. They must be completed by their due dates on the syllabus. You must also complete the homework assignments by their due dates. The extra practice assignments will not be graded. They're just to give you extra problems to work on to go ahead and practice for exams. As I said, there's a 14-day free trial of the ebook, so there's no reason why you can't all access it and begin homework and reading assignments today. Okay, so be sure you can do that. Now, if you don't already own a calculator for the course, an excellent simple calculator doesn't have a lot of bells and whistles, so it's not very expensive. You usually can get it between $10 to $20 in that range, somewhere in the middle there. You can purchase this calculator, and it will have the scientific notation functions that you need, exponent functions, your logarithm functions that you need. So it'll do everything you need for this class, and it's fairly simple to operate, and I can quickly answer questions even over the phone as to which buttons you should be pushing if you purchase this calculator. It's a Texas Instruments TI-30XA. Okay, so that's a good calculator for the course. If you use another calculator for the course, I would recommend keeping the owner's manual, or look up the owner's manual online when you have questions about which buttons you should be pressing. I would look at those maybe in advance if you notice we're going to have to do calculations in lecture. If you're looking ahead, make sure you know how to enter those calculations on your calculator so that doesn't slow you down. So try to be very proficient with your calculators. For the laboratory, you will find that on Blackboard, when you log onto the lecture course, on the left-hand side, about 2/3 of the way down, will be a tab that says Laboratory. If you click on that tab, there'll be lab documents, and there will also be your lab assignments. Okay, your lab assignments will include a copy of your handouts for each week, so you do not need to purchase a separate lab manual. We have all the experimental procedures on Blackboard for you ready to go. You will have 2 weeks to complete the laboratory for each one of our laboratories. That gives you Tuesdays and Thursdays on those 2 weeks. And the only exceptions to those would be if your school has other activities planned on one of those days. Most of the assignments can be finished, though, in 3 days, and the 4th day would just allow you to wrap up working on questions, or if you hadn't completed part of the lab, it would give you a little extra time. So make sure you go into Blackboard every week, and the Friday before you begin a lab, you should print out the handout and read through it carefully. You're going to need to take a quiz Monday nights before that first Tuesday that you begin a lab. That Monday night, you should take a quiz on Blackboard that your lab instructor has set up for you. You should go ahead and complete that quiz, and that determines how well you've read through the lab and if you're prepared and thought about safety concerns and thought about the calculations and experimental procedures you'll be performing. You should come to lab with your handout and realize that if you read carefully through it, you should be able to begin the laboratory very quickly after an introduction by your lab instructor. So they should give you some background information and then get you started. With respect to a notebook for lab, okay, on campus we have very specific bound laboratory notebooks that you should be using. I recommend that if you're in one of our dual credit classes that you have some type of bound notebook. Could be just a spiral bound notebook that you're keeping track of everything in, but I would like you to try to keep track of your notebook like a professional chemist might, and you'll see there will be a little electronic tutorial that shows you how to document your labs and how to format it like a chemist's notebook would normally be formatted. This is exactly what we have our students on campus do with their laboratories with this formatting. I have a little tutorial that I have posted on YouTube that will kind of discuss the things that we would normally look for in your lab procedures. If your lab instructor wants anything different than what is in that tutorial, they should tell you, but it will give you kind of an outline of how to format everything. You will also notice on Blackboard, if you look at the Laboratory tab and under the Lab Documents, that you have an example lab report and common formatting errors that you will get point deductions for. If before you turn in your lab report you check for those formatting errors and make sure you haven't made any of them, that'll help ensure you're not losing points on laboratory reports for formatting. Okay, so just go ahead and take a look at that. That should give you some help. Now, for your lab as well, you should always be wearing splash-resistant safety goggles. Okay, on campus, our students are required to purchase the safety goggles. For the dual credit high school students, you would want to ask your lab instructor if they're being provided, but make sure you always have splash resistant goggles that you should wear whenever anyone is working in the laboratory. So you'll need those for the first week's lab because you'll be looking at some demonstrations and running some of your own mini experiments, and so you want to be safely able to handle those chemicals or be near them as you watch the demos. Okay, again, make sure you have your calculator for lab as well as lectures. Have your calculator with you every day. I would keep it in your book bag and bring it with you for every activity for the course, because we will ask you to do some calculations potentially in lectures, and in lab you definitely will have to do calculations, and you'll need it for your homework assignments as well. Now on campus we have our students use iClickers. For our dual credit high school students, you do not need to purchase an iClicker. You will not be doing that. Instead of that, your reading quizzes are weighted with a few more points. So do not worry about the iClickers for dual credit classes. However, you should have a homework notebook. Even though you're taking the homework quizzes online, I recommend you keep a spiral bound notebook with all of your handwritten work of the steps to solve problems, so you have reference as to how to solve those types of problems in the future. That will help you study for exams. It helps you review. It's very difficult to review for exams if your work is spread out on loose leaf papers, backs of envelopes, or just you did it in your head. It's hard to remind yourself how to work problem types. So if you keep track of all the problems you're working carefully step by step, it's a great reference. And planning out writing those steps down helps you memorize the steps to solving problems, and helps you develop the critical thinking skills for solving those types of problems on a test. So please keep track of your homework carefully in an organized notebook. The more organized it is, the more it will help you, especially since in my course I allow students the chance, if they're working hard, to try to resubmit homework up to 3 times. So if you have them in your homework notebook, it's very easy to go back and look for errors and try to improve your scores. Now realize that the grade for your homework, though, is coming from submitting your online homework questions on McGraw-Hill Connect's website. That's where I will keep track of your homework scores, so make sure you're doing that online. Keep all the handwritten work for your own reference in the notebooks. Okay, if you would like some extra calculation examples, if you want to see more, you are welcome to purchase a guide online that's called Calculation Guide, Calculations in Chemistry and Introduction. Okay, if you decide to purchase this guide, it's kind of useful. You might go in with a couple of friends and purchasing it. It has quite a few example problems worked out. Many of you may decide you don't need this extra calculation guide because the online homework, if you get stumped on a problem, you can hit the give up button and it will give you the step-by-step solutions. The online homework will give you a lot of example solutions anyway, so you may not need this, but if you want an extra one for example problems, this book should have a lot of good examples for the types of calculations you need to do in the course. You'll also find that you'll have example calculations shown in the lecture notes, as well as I said on McGraw-Hill Connect on your online homework. There's keys to the homework problems you can look at. And as we finish the homework for every chapter, I open a set of practice questions that you can view. And those practice questions are not graded, so you can go through and practice the questions or just give up on the questions and see the step-by-step solutions if you want to see how to work them. And these should be very similar or nearly identical questions to what you did on the homework. So if you said on question 13 on the homework, I kept not passing that question, I was getting it wrong and you didn't understand why, you could use the practice questions after the fact to look at that type of problem, ask the computer to show you the solution to it, and then you would know exactly step by step how to set up that problem. So you have a lot of examples out there for your reference as long as you take advantage of them. Okay? And you don't have to wait for me to get back to you in an email if you use the computer to look those up. Okay, so realize labs will begin the first week of the course, our official first week, and so you need to finish a pre-lab assignment for every week except for the first week. Okay, your lab instructor should go ahead and introduce you to how to do pre-lab assignments during the first week. The first week's pre-lab will not be required. That part of the grade will actually be part of your lab report and post-lab questions set of points. This is first lab's the only one you won't need a pre-lab on. So don't forget, for the second week's lab, for the second lab of the semester, you're going to be doing graphing, and that one has a pre-lab assignment. You must complete it Monday night before you begin that set of lab procedures to get points for it, and it's worth 20% of your lab grade, so don't forget to work through that one. Okay. So you can find for this first lab of the semester that you should be working on Introduction to Chemistry and the Scientific Method handout that's available on Blackboard under the Laboratory tab in the assignment folder. Now that pre-lab won't be due for this first time, but they will be due for every lab for the rest of the course after that, so just be aware of it. Okay? Remember, your laboratory grade is worth 20% of your lecture grade for the course, so you want to do well in lab, and if you do not pass the laboratory portion of the course, you cannot pass the class, so it's very important that you do well with your lab reports. For the dual credit classes, you don't really need to worry about attending your assigned lab section. There should only be one section on your campus usually, so make sure that you're meeting with your lab instructor. They will give you any additional details with locations for that. Make sure you print and read the laboratory handout. I recommend the Friday night before the week you're going to do lab, print it out, and over the weekend read through all the procedures and be well prepared for lab with safety. You can start setting up your notebook for lab so that it's formatted correctly. Do the pre-lab sections of the notebook before you come in. Your lab instructor should check those sections of your notebook to see if you prepared them before lab so you receive credit for formatting on those. That's mentioned more in the formatting your laboratory notebook video, so just take a look at that if you're curious about what you need to have done before lab. Okay, normally you have a pre-lab quiz, as I stated before, the night before you attend the first day of that lab experiment that you're beginning. Okay, so for the second experiment of the semester, graphing, Monday night before that first Tuesday that you begin that lab, you should take the Blackboard quiz. If you forget to do this, you will receive a 0 on that, and our policy is to not allow you to participate in the lab if you did not do the pre-lab quiz, because that means you did not carefully read through the material. So be aware of that. So each laboratory I've scheduled 2 weeks to work on, and as long as your high school has you in class during these days, you should be working on Tuesdays and Thursdays of those 2 weeks, so you should have 4 class periods to complete the experiment. Okay, if you have extra time on that last Thursday of the experiment, I recommend working on the post-lab questions. You're welcome to discuss them with your lab partner as long as you're doing your own work. You can discuss strategies for solving the problems. You may not copy problems down. You must write out the steps for solving them yourself. You may also ask your lab instructor for help, or you may email me, and I will get back to you as soon as possible with how to work those types of problems if you're having any issues. The post-lab reports and question sets. So the post-lab questions and the final report for the lab should all be turned in to your lab instructor by Friday of the second week of the lab. Okay, so you should be completing on Thursday that second week your lab report and answering all the questions, and then on Friday you should hand those in at the time that your lab instructor has suggested, but it should be no later than 1 day after you complete the lab that you're turning in your lab reports. For grading for the course, well, you have a syllabus quiz right at the beginning of the class. You need to print the syllabus right at the beginning, read through it, take a quiz on Blackboard. The quiz on Blackboard is under the syllabus tab on the left-hand side, right at the top. Underneath the electronic copy of the syllabus, you will see there's a quiz underneath that's available as long as you do it before the date that it closes, which is on your syllabus schedule as to when it must be completed. If you complete that syllabus quiz, it's worth 10 points in the course. That's as much as an entire homework assignment, so make sure you complete it. They're actually really easy to get these points, so you don't want to miss the syllabus quiz points. Very simple questions. Shouldn't take you maybe more than 10 or 20 minutes max, and I give you 3 attempts to answer them, so if you don't get a perfect score the first time, you can go back in and correct anything you didn't understand. Just read through the syllabus and answer those questions. Very easy quiz. It confirms that you've read the syllabus and you've had a copy of the syllabus available for you. The next thing I want to talk about is exams. The exams through the course, there's going to be 4 of them. Now they're split into several mini parts, so you will have about 3 days per exam. You will work on portions of the exam during your lecture time period for the course. Those exams, though, each one of them, so exam 1 with all of its parts will be worth 100 points. And so each of these 4 exams are worth 100 points each. So that's 40% of your course grade for those 4 exams. Okay. Your reading assignments are on McGraw-Hill Connect. They have a little LS symbol next to them for Learn Smart. Those reading assignments are worth 100 points over the course of the semester. And that's 10% of your course grade, so it's a whole letter grade. So don't forget to do your reading assignments or it would drop you a letter grade. They are graded, so make sure you complete those. The nice thing about reading assignments is you can continue working on the questions. If you miss a question, the computer will go ahead and keep assessing you with similar types of questions until it feels like you understand that topic. And as long as you finally get a 100% completion on the reading assignments, it will notify you 100% completed. You'll get full points even if you had missed something along the way, so you can keep trying to answer those. The only penalty for getting a question incorrect is it takes you a little more time because the computer will quiz you on some additional questions. Now, I suggest you give yourself between 1 to 2 hours to complete the reading assignment quizzes. That's because most students will go back and look in their chapters, look up information they may have forgotten, and so that takes you a little bit more time than it maybe recommends the time on the quiz itself. Many of the McGraw-Hill Connect Learn Smart quizzes will tell you about 20 to 30 minutes to work through the quiz problems. Usually takes students quite a bit longer because they go back and look at things. Okay, so give yourself 1 to 2 hours to work on those reading quizzes. Okay. For your homework for the course, That is on McGraw-Hill Connect. They're worth 10 points each. And the homework is going to be worth 14% of your lecture grade, so almost 1.5 letter grades. So make sure you do as well as you can on those. I give students up to 3 attempts to complete their homework assignments. If you do not keep careful track of your homework problems in your homework notebooks, you may find it quite challenging to do a second attempt because you'd have to work through all the steps from scratch. If you, however, have written the steps in your homework notebook, you can go back, and if it's an algorithmic problem that changes some of the numbers in the calculation, you can just change your numbers in the steps in your homework notebook, and you'll readily be able to do a second attempt and increase your score. If you do not write down your steps in your homework notebook, it'll be very difficult to take a second or third attempt. So please write things down and keep track of everything. I do, however, encourage you to do your best on your first attempt, and there is a 4% penalty each time you take one of your additional attempts, up to 8% if you take all 3 attempts. But even then, you get a 92% on the homework if you get everything right by your third attempt, so it's very possible to get an A on your homework assignments, even if you use all of the attempts. It's just to encourage you to do your best that first time, so you get a slight point boost if you get it perfect the first time around. For the final exam for the course, your final exam for the course will be worth 150 points. That's 15% of your course grade. We have a standardized final for the course. It's offered by the American Chemical Society. We call it the ACS exam for American Chemical Society. It's a multiple choice set of questions that will quiz you over your knowledge over the entire course throughout the entire book. So you must be well prepared. Now, before you take the standardized exam, I have a set of review question sets you can work through to kind of get used to timed questions that are multiple choice. I think that'll help you feel a little more comfortable when you come to take the standardized final. So we'll do that during the very end of the course to help prepare you. For the laboratory portion of the course, it's worth 200 points or 20% of your course grade. You must also, however, pass the laboratory in order to pass the course, so just be aware of that. You have some review quizzes that are on Blackboard. It's under the review quiz tab. Those review quizzes will quiz you on things such as element names and symbols, common ions, names and formulas. It will also quiz you on chemical names and formulas, and this is a way you can earn some extra credit in the course, up to 40 points of extra credit, so up to 4% extra credit in the course. So please try to work on those. The interesting thing about the review quizzes is that with the review quizzes, if you complete an attempt by their due date and you receive a 33% or higher, so if you get at least a third of the questions right on a review quiz, the review quiz will not close. You can continue taking additional attempts and try to increase your grade for the entire course to earn those extra credit points. That's to encourage you to use review quizzes to help you study and practice naming compounds and writing their formulas before the first exam, as well as before the final for the course. You can keep practicing these. Just realize that your final grade for review quizzes for those extra credit points is determined by your very last attempt. So try to do your best the last time you take these quizzes. If you do not complete your first attempt on these quizzes by their due date with at least a third of the questions correct, then you will receive 0 extra credit points on that quiz. So it's very important you give an honest, really good attempt that first time, but then you can keep going back and working on them. This is the only type of assignment in the course that stays open where you get these unlimited attempts if you meet this type of goal by the first date. Everything else will close and you no longer have a chance to increase your points on in the course once the due date hits. Okay, and passes. So just be sure this is the only one that has that odd submission. Okay. Some studying tips for the course. If you're worried about how to study for the course, well, I recommend you read through the chapters before we lecture about the material so you know what questions to ask. You maybe understand which material is confusing for you, because then you'll know what to pay attention to. Email me questions about or ask instructors for help about. If you wait to read the chapter until after we've already covered it in lecture, you missed all those opportunities to ask for help. Okay, and it's just you're a little bit behind. So try to read before we cover it in class. While you're reading it, I recommend taking notes. List all the most important topics that you're reading and all the subtopics under that. That'll help you review for exams much more quickly than having to reread the chapter without any types of notes taken. So please do that. That's kind of some study skills that you need to learn as you go along. Also realize that you should complete the reading assignments on every chapter, and those reading assignments are due right when we're beginning a chapter, so just be aware of that. Don't forget to do those because they're worth 10% of your course grade, worth a full letter grade, so make sure you're doing that. Make sure you're working homework problems every day. I recommend trying to work at least 10 to 15 homework problems every night if you can. That gives you a chance to go back and rework them time-wise if you need a little more help. But aim for at least 10 questions. Try to do 15 questions if they're easy every night. If you make a mistake, use McGraw-Hill Connect to see the stepwise solution if you give up on working that type of problem, or ask me via email or by phone how to work that type of problem if you need help. Sometimes I'll put an extra video tutorial up if I know you're having problems in the class working a type of problem. And ask your instructors if you need help on those. Okay, but check your mistakes, find out what you're doing wrong so you don't repeat the mistakes on an exam. I have been known to take questions that we have worked in lab for post-lab questions, or on homework, or with respect to lecture example questions. Sometimes I'll take a question very similar to one of those that you've seen and I'll put it on the test. I have been known to pick the hardest ones we might have covered, but since you've seen examples, you've been prepared. As long as you realize Dr. Gardner likes to pick the hard questions and put them on exams. Make sure you learn how to work through those types of problems. Other study resources, you could set up study groups with your fellow students in the class. That's a good way to study. A lot of times I'll give an extra credit point in the course if I have confirmed there's a set of you studying together, and I would ask that your laboratory instructors at the high school confirm if there's a group of you studying, and they can send me a list of who deserves a study group extra credit point for doing that. That's just my little carrot to try to get you going in study groups. Websites are great for finding chemistry information, but I recommend using university and college websites or government websites to find information. High school websites sometimes have a few more errors, so just be careful about that. Blackboard, if you go ahead and go to our web page on Blackboard for the course, you can find a lot of helpful handouts and materials that will help you in the course, including lecture notes that have PowerPoint notes of what we're covering. Also realize that if you email me or call me in my office during my office hours, I'm glad to give you a hand if you happen to be near CSI during a weekday, which I don't know how many of you will actually be able to do that, but I am in my office during my office hours in the Evergreen Building, room A17. That's listed on the syllabus for your reference as well. The key to doing well in a course like this is practicing every day. Okay, you should be practicing problems every day, just like you would in a math class. You're also kind of learning a lot of new terms, kind of like a language course. So you need to keep practicing in order to master the language of chemistry, as well as being able to master the mathematics of the calculations we're performing. So you have to put quite a bit of effort in. You should be saying to yourself, am I working problems every day? If you aren't, you may be not practicing enough to do really well in the course. And I'd love to see all of you get an A with respect to getting all of your points in the course. So please practice. Do your best. You have multiple attempts on assignments that you can use to try to get perfect scores, so it's very possible, so work quite hard. I would recommend that with your reading and homework and reviewing in the course, that you'll probably be spending between 6 to 9 or 6 to 10 hours a week at least studying. If you're not spending that amount of time, you're probably not studying enough. A rule of thumb that I tell all of my students on campus that for every credit hour of the course, that's about 3 hours of study per week. Okay, so if it's a 4-credit class, sometimes you could expect up to 12 hours a week. But in the high school courses, you have a little bit more time, so maybe 6 to 9 hours a week is more realistic to what you would be putting in. If you need to put more time in, that has to be done for some students. If it doesn't come very easily to you, you might have to practice a little more. Just realize that. Make sure you keep practicing, get help when you need it, and keep on top of things. Don't fall behind on assignments or it's hard to catch up. Okay, let's look at some of our due dates here for the first 2 weeks of the course. You'll notice that I have these due dates attached as a tentative set of due dates that could potentially change if I send you an announcement, but these are the planned due dates for assignments for the course. You can always look that up in your syllabus, okay, so be aware of that. Any changes should be announced on the announcement page on Blackboard or sent to your Eagle Mail through your CSI student account. So you should check your announcement page on Blackboard and your student Eagle Mail account for any important announcements. I expect you to do that daily so you don't miss anything. Do not wait several days or you might miss an important link to a new video tutorial or help on a question that I'm seeing students are having trouble on, or you may miss seeing a change in a due date. So just be aware of that. So you'll notice that our very first Monday of the course, you should already have registered for the class at CSI. You have been told to do this multiple times through your high school. They should have made sure that you were registered at CSI and you'd taken the compass so you could go ahead and be a student here, because you will need to access Blackboard this first day. If you cannot access Blackboard yet, you need to fix this immediately, and any assignments you miss at this point because you did not register for classes, you will receive a 0 for. So make sure you're ready for this. So on Monday, the very first day of the course, you should be introduced to the class and start looking over Chapter 2 materials. There's a syllabus quiz on Blackboard. Under the syllabus tab, you should work on. That's due no later than 11:59 p.m. on the CSI Blackboard site. This is based on the clock on our website, so I would try to work it a few minutes earlier at least. I would do it several hours earlier actually, but you don't want to get too close to that time in case your watch or your wall clock is different. You want to make sure you complete it in plenty of time. I'd maybe start trying to do the syllabus quiz the weekend before this first Monday so that you don't have to worry about it. Plus remember, if you give yourself enough time, there's 3 attempts on that syllabus quiz, so you can try to improve your score to get a perfect score. If you're missing any questions, read through the syllabus again so you understand what you may have misunderstood the first time. Okay, on Tuesday of the first week of the course, you should be working in lab. I would also ask that that night, so you're going to begin the introduction to lab and lab safety in the labs portion of the course with your lab instructor. At home, I would like you to log on to McGraw-Hill Connect's homework website, so you should get that set up. I recommend maybe setting that up before the first week of the course. Work on the basics of using Connect. There's a set of training videos right at the top under our McGraw-Hill Connect website for the course. Use the link to enter the website and register your email that I've included in my handouts for due dates for the first week that I'll be sending you via email and putting on the announcement page for the course. I also have it on the syllabus for the course, so you can see the link in order to go to the McGraw-Hill Connect. So there's a set of training videos I want to watch as your homework on this Tuesday. That will tell you how to enter your answers to questions on the online homework and not have formatting errors, such as extra spaces or using the formula toolbars incorrectly. This will help you with those. Okay? Now, by Wednesday of the first week, you should have finished reading Chapter 2, and you should have been working on the Chapter 2 reading assignment on McGraw-Hill Connect. I try working on that in a few days in advance if you can, to give yourself plenty of time to read and work through the problems. It will save your work and you can come back and continue working on it. But the very last chance to finish the Learn Smart Reading assignment, which has an LS icon next to it on the McGraw-Hill Connect assignments, is by 11:59 p.m. on Wednesday night. So give yourself plenty of time. Like I said, it usually takes students 1 to 2 hours to work through these if they've read the chapter in advance. Okay, so just be aware of that. Sometimes students have to go back and reread sections, so give yourself enough time. Now on Thursday, you should be doing your second set of lab work. Remember, you have the first 2 weeks to complete this first lab on safety and the scientific method. You'll notice in the syllabus, I list lab 1 and the name for it, so you know what you're working on. There's also an extra credit assignment this Thursday night. So that's extra credit on Blackboard. So this is a Blackboard quiz, and you'll notice I list if you're on Connect for assignments or on Blackboard for assignments, so you know where to go to work on them. You'll want to go ahead and print the handout under the Useful Handout tab on the left-hand side of Blackboard's webpage for the course. There's a set of element names and symbols you should start learning. I also would assign you here to start working on the first 36 elements, names, and symbols, as well as the extra elements that are on this handout. Okay, begin learning all those elements, names, and symbols, and then take the elements, symbols, and names test by 11:59 p.m. This is one of those extra credit quizzes that if you get at least a third of the questions correct by this due date, it stays open and you continue trying to improve your score. Now, you are on your honor, though, on these review extra credit quizzes to not look at handouts, don't look in your textbook, don't use any internet references, only using a periodic table and your brain, you should be able to answer these questions. I will know if you've been practicing these without looking things up, because on the exams, I'll expect you to answer these types of questions just using a periodic table in your brain. Okay, so be aware of that. So this is on your honor on those. Now on Friday of the first week, you should have completed at this point. So throughout the week, you should be working on the Chapter 2 homework, Part 1. Chapter 2 homework Part 1 is on Connect. You'll notice that on your syllabus, under your schedule, it says Connect. So it's a McGraw-Hill Connect, an online homework assignment. It's right under the Learn Smart Reading assignment. Okay? You should be working on that. Part 1 is due no later than 11:59 p.m. on Friday. Okay? So I would be working these homework problems every night this first week to be prepared for that. Okay, for the second week of the course, you'll notice we're still working on the same laboratory. You have 2 weeks to complete each one of our sets of laboratory experiments as well as the post-lab questions. Okay, you're doing lab work on Tuesdays and Thursdays, as you'll notice on our schedule. Now, Monday of the first week, you'll be watching some more videos on Chapter 2 material to help you work those types of problems. You should be working on Part 2 of the homework assignment over the weekend as well as Monday night. On Tuesday night, you should, at school, be working on your lab work. You're doing your third day of the Safety and Scientific Methods lab. You should be starting to wrap things up around this time and maybe get to the post-lab questions. And you should complete the Chapter 2 homework that night on the McGraw-Hill Connect online homework. It's due no later than 11:59 p.m. on Connect that night. Okay. On Wednesday, you should be starting Part 3 of the Chapter 2 homework. It will be due on Friday, but be working problems every single night to keep up with things. On Thursday, you'll go ahead and do lab work. There's an extra credit quiz on common ions. So there's a handout you'll be looking at with common ions. I'm getting you ready for Chapter 3 in advance. So yes, I expect you to look at the handout, start to learn common ion names and formulas and charges before we cover it in lecture. That'll make Chapter 3 quite a bit easier for you. So start working on those. You must get at least a third of them correct on this extra credit quiz by 11:59 p.m. Thursday night, so that you can receive the extra credit points and have the quiz stay open so you can do unlimited attempts to improve your score. Again, you're on your honor not to look things up. All you get is a periodic table in your brain. Okay, so try to answer those on Blackboard. Okay. Friday night will be your Chapter 2 homework Part 3 that's due. We will be wrapping up Chapter 2 here this second week of the course. And then what you can do to find your schedule for the rest of the semester, or the rest of this first term, is to look on your syllabus under the tentative schedule. Keep looking at those due dates and keep up with everything. I'll be sending out weekly reminders of what you should be doing as well via email. I will send a copy of that to you as well as to your lab instructor, your instructor there that's helping us. And so just be aware of that. Make sure you keep track of your due dates. It is not a valid excuse to say you just didn't realize, because you should be looking at all these due date reminders I'm sending out and that are on your syllabus. And if you forget to do an assignment, you will receive a 0 score for that. Okay, so make sure you do all of your assignments on time. Okay, if you have any questions, please email me. That's the end of my introduction to the course. I'm going to be having you watch this introduction the first week of class.